The Seattle Seahawks are headed back to the Super Bowl, and it was a big one, a 31-27 win over their division rivals, the Los Angeles Rams. The home crowd was rocking at Lumen Field. Fantastic game. We were all excited to see this one, as much as anything because of the coaching matchup between Mike Macdonald on defense. You had Sean McVay for the Rams on offense. But it was Klint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks, that really came through in the clutch here. Doug Farrar joins me now. Doug, you had 3 plays that you picked out where Klint Kubiak really changed this game at key junctures throughout the 60 minutes that we saw from Seattle. You were there on site. You saw the game live. What are these 3 plays? Break it down for us. Let's start with the first one. How did these plays change the entire complexion of this game as we went on?
Yeah, before we get into the plays, just real quick. In this game, Darnold was 25 of 36 for 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a pass rating of 127.8. In his first 2 games against the Rams this season, he was 51 of 78 for 549, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and a pass rating of 62.4, his worst pass rating against any team this season. And in this game, all 3 of Darnold's touchdown passes came under pressure. In his 2 previous games against the Rams this season, he had thrown 3 interceptions and no touchdowns under pressure. So it was Kubiak's job, and it showed up from the press box. And then when I watched the tape this morning, it showed up really well how Kubiak's play designs allowed Darnold to maintain his predilection for explosive plays downfield, but still stay within himself. You know this. Darnold has always been kind of a streaky guy. It can be amazing, and it can be whoa. There'll be 2 or 3 plays a game where you're like, what are you doing? But in this game, it was how Kubiak set the Rams defense up. And it was Rashid Shaheed, the receiver that the Seahawks got in a trade with the Saints about mid-season. And the interesting thing about Shaheed is he has now played the Rams 4 times this season. He had a big catch back when he was with the Saints. I believe it was week 8 against Chris Shua's defense. And then the first game in week 11, second game in week 16, his return acumen was one of the reasons that the Rams fired their special teams coach after that game. So he had already been making big plays against the Rams and getting coaches fired and whatnot. He's certainly an X factor. And in this game, they set Shaheed up as the vertical element and the clear out guy in ways that were just brilliant. And I really want to focus on that. So we'll start with 12:51 left in the first quarter. Seahawks first drive, 51-yard vertical boundary route to Shaheed. And before we get into his route, notice number 10, Cooper Kupp, motioning into the backfield. Put a pin in that because they did this on a later play for a touchdown where you motion a receiver into the backfield. Cam Akers is the running back to Darnold's left. And you'll notice here, he flares out pre-snap into a slot roll. And what that does is, just to go to my notes here, he took underneath safety Jalen McCullough with him. And as Akers motioned out, you can see the Rams change their pass defense strength to that side. Everyone's moving over, which left Shaheed one-on-one with cornerback Darius Williams with no help up top. Now, Cameron Kitchens, the deep safety to this side, came down to match Kupp's little up and out route. If this had been cover 2 or cover 6, where it was cover 2 to the boundary and cover 4 to the field, Kitchens probably stays up top, and it's safety Quentin Lake who robs Kupp underneath. But here, with every deep defensive back responsible for a quarter of the field, the Rams were stuck, and there was no way that Williams was going to keep up with Shaheed's speed because most people won't. So if I run the play, you can see this. Right there, you've got the Rams coming down to rob. And here's Shaheed with Darius Williams trying to follow. No deep help. I mean, you got this guy trying to spin over, but it really ain't going to work. And bang, 51-yard play. Later. So this reminded me of Super Bowl III in a way. Don Maynard, who was the Jets deep receiver at the time, Hall of Famer, one of the greatest deep receivers ever, didn't catch a single pass in that game, which the Jets won 16-7, changed pro football history and all that. But Joe Namath threw him a deep pass early in the game. It was just incomplete. But from then on, the Colts, through the entire game, were putting 2 guys on Maynard wherever he went. And that allowed the run game to succeed, and for George Sauer, who was kind of the Cooper Kupp to Maynard's Rashid Shaheed, to catch all that stuff underneath. And really, this play set up 2 of Darnold's 3 touchdown passes, because all of a sudden, okay, we know it's man. We're changing the passing strength. See those guys move over, and all of a sudden, it's one-on-one. You can't leave a cornerback one-on-one with Shaheed downfield like that. You have to have someone up top. If they had called cover 6, where you've got a deep safety, if this safety commits to over-the-top help, you've got a 2-on-1 on Shaheed. But this is just that's that's over.
Yeah, underrated aspect of this play also is that if the safety does roll over Shaheed's side and takes away that vertical route, Cooper Kupp absolutely cooks Lake on this little like fake angle and then into a pivot, into a whip route, whatever you want to call it, and then he gains that sideline. So if Darnold didn't have the vertical, if he comes back down in the progression and sees Kupp, he's got leverage on the outside. He catches that. He's probably up the field for 15 or 20 yards. So would have been about half what they got from Shaheed. But even if that hadn't worked, just speaking again to both the balance between the scheme and the execution from Kubiak to the players themselves and setting them up to succeed, there was multiple ways for this to turn into a big play here because of the way it was designed and the way it was executed by multiple guys.
The Patriots coaching staff will have 2 weeks to dissect a lot of things. Let's put it that way. So we move forward to Darnold's 14-yard touchdown pass to Jackson Smith-Njigba with 25 seconds left in the first half. It's not like Smith-Njigba needs schematic help. He's probably the best receiver in the NFL. But the way they set this up was brilliant. Here we have Smith-Njigba motioning into the backfield. We've seen this before, right? Well, Shaheed is the outside guy, and Cooper Kupp is the inside guy, and they're running a concept called RB scissors, where the running back or the target in the backfield runs a corner, and the outside receiver, in this case Shaheed, the speed receiver, runs a post. So it's just a scissors concept. This is a Kyle Shanahan staple. Klint Kubiak was on Shanahan's staff in 2023 with a backup quarterback named Sam Darnold. Go figure. So you can see the scissors here. Smith-Njigba runs the corner route. Shaheed runs the post. And what happens is you've got 2 guys up top taking Shaheed. Again, we have to double him. He's a deep threat no matter what happens. So what you have here is Kupp's route from the slot takes the underneath safety. That's just a little curl comeback thing. And Nate Landman, the linebacker, is supposed to carry. He's supposed to carry.
Good luck with that, Nate. Good luck.
He's supposed to get. Well, okay, it gets even worse because you see, 53 Landman, he actually goes the wrong way. Dead. So again, the concept of Shaheed as a deep receiver takes the entire top off the defense because you have to. Because if you let him just roll through on that post, he's going to catch the touchdown. But in this case, Cooper Kupp takes the underneath safety, and you've got a linebacker turning the wrong way on one of the faster receivers in the NFL, and this is what happens.
Yeah, he doesn't even have eyes on him here, Doug. If you look, his eyes are in the backfield. He flips his hips the wrong way, and this is, for context, this play you mentioned, it's 25 seconds left in a half, but the Shaheed touchdown earlier set the tone early, but the Seahawks are down at this point in the game. The Seahawks are down 3, and they have an opportunity to double dip because they know they're getting the ball to start the second half. So to score this touchdown in this moment, to take the lead, going into half, knowing you're going to get the ball was massive.
And there's, you're committing to Kupp underneath. You have to take 2 guys with Shaheed, and Nate Landman is looking the wrong way. Now, this is cover 4. I don't know if Landman thought he had help. Maybe he was supposed to run some sort of hook curl thing, but it was just a blown coverage against maybe the best receiver in the NFL. And that's how you get a corner route wide open for 5 yards, which is kind of hilarious. Not if you're a Rams fan, of course.
Well, I love this idea, Doug, because it's easy to say, well, how do you leave that guy wide open? He's the number 1 receiver. But this is how. This is what happens when you set the tone early with that deep ball and you know you have to take that away. And obviously, Cooper Kupp's no slouch. He had a fantastic game in his own right, had some clutch catches, some really big plays for them against his old team. So it's like you really are picking your poison at that point, and that's where the scheme comes into play. When you move a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba around and get creative with how you align him and you stress the defense's responsibilities and reactions, you stress their rules, right? Based on the spacings and based on who's where. It's not necessarily, Jackson Smith-Njigba is the guy we have to focus on. It's well, this guy's going this way, this guy's going the other way. We have to take away the deep speed that burned us earlier. It's setting yourself up to fail because your scheme is not being able to account for the creativity and the execution that we saw in that play.
Yeah, that's true, Luke. And really what Kubiak did to force displacement with motion and receiver distribution and location, to quote my good friend Greg Cosell, who likes to say that, was brilliant, bravura. It's not often that an opposing offensive coordinator will out-scheme Sean McVay. Kubiak did in this game. And by the way, judging from the way Tom Brady was reacting in the broadcast, I think Kubiak might want to start buying real estate in Las Vegas. Just saying.
That's happening.
Justifiably so. So, a little background on this play. This was Darnold's 13-yard touchdown pass to Kupp with 4:57 left in the third quarter. It was basic, kind of a mini dagger in the red zone with Shaheed running the vertical route from the outside slot. Kupp runs the dig with the little outside fake. But what happens when Smith-Njigba runs his 5-yard in cut from the inside slot, that takes linebacker Omar Spates out of the picture as the hook defender in cover 3. So now the Rams have 2 defenders on Shaheed deep, Cameron Kitchens and cornerback Roger McCreary. That leaves Quentin Lake on Kupp, and Lake takes a step outside because he has to honor Kupp's outside fake before Kupp puts his foot in the turf and runs the dig. And this was just another easy big play set up by Kubiak's brilliant understanding of how to leverage a defensive speed up top and route diversity underneath. So let's take a look at this. You got Kupp in motion. They're moving, but they're not traveling. So we know it's zone. We don't know if it's single high or two high yet. So you see the play run out. First thing you have right away is Shaheed running upfield. And again, he's the clear out guy. You now have 2 people committing to him. This is going to be cover 3. But right here, this guy who should be down here to counter Kupp is up here because he has to respect Shaheed. So once again, even the threat of Rashid Shaheed makes the whole coverage weird. Then you go back to what Kupp does on the play. And this is Cooper Kupp should be an NFL coach one day, because you talk to any of the Seahawks people, they're like, he'll bring in plays and we'll go, oh my God, how did you think of this? This is brilliant. But it's the little subtleties that Kupp does. Watch how, before he runs the dig in dagger, and again, dagger is inside vertical, outside dig. And you can run different versions of it, but that's basically, and you know this, Luke, you've been a quarterback, dagger is the first day install. Everyone runs it. The Rams killed Seattle, ironically, with dagger in week 16. But here, with Rashid Shaheed running the vertical, now watch how Kupp does this little outside fake before he runs the dig. See that? His defender has to...
You attack that outside shoulder to get his hips to move that way.
He's outside, and this is now an easy catch. So again, Kubiak sets Darnold up for, even though he's pressured, this is an easy opening. And I'm not saying that Darnold needs easy openings to denigrate him. I'm saying because he is such a variable quarterback, because so many different things can happen, either good or bad, Kubiak did such a great job. And Darnold couldn't practice basically at all this week.
Yep.
So I wonder if they spent extra time in the film room instead, Kubiak and Darnold, saying, okay, let's get your guys open in these different ways. And let's use the threat of Shaheed as the vertical guy to make everything else happen.
And I think an underrated aspect of these last 2 plays that we've seen is they're in the red zone. This one's on 3rd down, I believe. Like these are really, really hard situations to convert through the air because the field
high
is
leverage.
Intense. It's really, really difficult because, like you said, if you're at the 40, Shaheed's speed and able to take, especially on dagger, if you're trying to run that safety off, you've got a lot more vertical space to work with. Here, he's got to break that off and take it to the corner to kind of take the corner out of the play there. But it just makes your quarterback have to be so precise. It makes your receivers have to make those subtle moves to create those, again, high leverage situations. You've got to be perfect, basically, to not turn the ball over when you try to put it in the air in the red zone, because the windows are tighter. You don't have all that vertical space to work with. And so, again, from scheme to execution, again, for the second play in a row that we've seen now, once you get inside the red zone, everything gets tighter, and it speaks to their execution and the way Kubiak was able to create these spaces in order to be able to execute the way they did.
Well, let's start with the end zone angle too, because you have, and let's see what happens to Darnold. You got Ken Walker Stewart doing a fake flare out. That disrupts the pass strength to that side. So now you got people wondering what's going on there. But again, Darnold has to make this throw. He's got muddy pocket on all three of his touchdowns. So we go back to this. Well, let's start with JSN in the inside slot. He will force the linebacker. He'll force Spates to commit over there. So Spates is now out. So now it's 2-on-2 on the dagger. The Rams thought they had a box. They really don't. So Shaheed's going up here. Well, you have to commit two guys here. So this middle safety is lost. He has no idea what he's doing. I mean, I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying Kubiak has set him up to be essentially meaningless in the coverage. And then, like you said, it's red zone. So usually dagger would be a 10 to 15 yard dig. Kupp has to run this dig in an enclosed, in a compressed space. And he has to fake that outside shoulder thing to get his guy out of the way. So everything happens it goes from seconds to milliseconds in the red zone. And again, just a brilliant play design. Even though Darnold's under pressure, it makes it relatively easier for him to complete the pass. And then Kupp just does his yak thing and boom, there you go. So
Kupp also knows this is 3rd and short, Doug. This is 3rd and 3. So he breaks that route off knowing, like, listen, I don't have to score here. I just need to move the chains and get us set up. And so I think that's subtle. Like you said, normally that dagger dig is going to be at a much deeper depth, but to know that all you have to do is move the chains here, and then he takes care of it after the catch. Another subtlety there that I think was huge.
The Seahawks have talked for a long time about sustaining offense, complementary offense. Yes, they're looking for big plays. What they really want is for Darnold to do what he did in this game, which is to stay on point. Yes, you'll have your explosive plays, but really it's about play after play after play and just decimating a defense over time. And because of Kubiak's brilliant play calling in the pass game, that's what they did.
And if you like more in-depth football breakdowns like this one, make sure to check out this video right here that we did on CJ Stroud.